being intimate on stage or on screen is risky. It's vulnerable. It's weird. As we said before, it's like not always part of our everyday thing. There's a risk in doing something new and unusual, but we want to feel safe to take those risks.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Steps, produced by Apolla Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham, and I am here with Bree Zabrowski with another fantastic episode lined up. Let's get into talking to Nicole Perry. Nicole is an award-winning intimacy director as well as an intimacy coordinator and dance choreographer. She is the founder of Momentum Stage, the founder of Intimacy Directors in Dance, and a founding member of Florida Intimacy Professionals. And hot off the press, everybody, she is the author of Careful Creativity in Theater and Dance Education, Consent Forward, Trauma-Informed, Psychologically Safe Movement Pedagogy. Be on the lookout for that, y'all. It's coming. We're the first to know. Yes. Love insider information. Oh my goodness.
Congratulations, Nicole. It's so exciting. And we're going to have you talk about all of that at the end of the episode. And we're going to dive in because we always have a lot to talk about with you when you're here. We're excited to have you back. So, for someone starting out in acting or dance or both, what are the absolute essentials they need to understand about consent, boundaries, and intimacy before they even step foot on a set or in a rehearsal room?
Thanks for having me back. It's always great to talk to you both. I think the most important thing to understand is that you have a body and you have a psyche, and that means that you have needs and you get to communicate your needs. And as performers, we don't always feel like we get to communicate our needs because, especially dancers, like we're a vessel for the art and it's all about doing the art. But there are sometimes things that don't feel good, and sometimes those things are physical, right? Of like, "Oh, I can't bend my back that way or my leg that way," and as dancers, we tend to be a little more proactive in speaking about protecting our bodies from an injury or re-aggravating an injury or if we need a modification, and don't recognize that sometimes we need those things for our emotional or mental well-being. I think sometimes there are just stories that are not safe for us to tell because of the material that it deals with, and it hits too close to home or to an experience that maybe we shouldn't relive. And sometimes there are things that we just don't want to do or to be touched in a certain way or be touched at all, whether it's in instruction or in choreography. And we should be able to communicate those things. And sometimes teachers ask for those things. Teachers and choreographers, I think, and directors are all getting a little bit better about asking for those things. In the few years that we've been talking to each other, it's become much more normal and accepted, I think, to talk about, do you have any boundaries or is there anything I need to know before we dive into this material? But I think just normalizing the conversation has to happen, and that we get to have one, even if somebody doesn't ask. You have boundaries and needs just because you're a person, therefore you get to express them.
And going into a job or a situation prepared with that mentality is step one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes going into things of like, oh, Romeo and Juliet, I know there might be a kiss in the pas de deux, or there's definitely gonna be a pas de deux. We have to partner, and there's going to be contact. And sometimes we're prepared for those things because we know what the material is, and then we can communicate really clearly because we already know. But sometimes we're learning, like we're taking class with a new teacher and we don't know. Sometimes we're learning or co-creating new material and choreography or devising work, and we don't know. And if you go in already saying, I get to express my needs, then you're much more likely to do it when the moment comes up rather than experience something and go, oh, I don't know if I should say anything.
And just to that point, there's so much fear around speaking up about potentially uncomfortable situations because there's money attached, there's livelihood attached, there's reputation attached, there's so much attached, unfortunately, to speaking up. So how can an actor or dancer protect themselves if something feels wrong on set?
Yeah, I think being able to do that professionally and say, "Hey, this isn't meeting my expectations." I talk a lot about nonviolent communication, and nonviolent communication, it's always about expressing your need that's like not getting met in a certain way rather than being like, you did this thing to me. That's doesn't usually set up a really good conversation, especially if you're working together or you're going to have to work together again. That might be true. They might have done that thing to you, but that's not the way to have a good working relationship. Being able to express, like, my expectation was the contact was hand to hand, and when you grabbed my wrist, I was thrown off balance, or I got scared that something was wrong and I didn't know what was going on. You know, being able to express things in those ways of like, this is what I expected, but this is what happened, or this is the need that I have in this moment to be able to do my job. I don't have a need because I am a diva. I have a need because I want to do my job well. And if this need doesn't get met, I might still do my job. Like, I might not walk out, I might not throw a fit, but it's not gonna be my best work. I'm gonna do my best work when I'm confident, when I feel trusted, when I can trust the people with me, when I feel respected and I can respect the people with me, and therefore our project is gonna be better. The music video we're making, the ballet we're doing, whatever, it's going to be better when we're all communicating and sharing that professional respect.
Yeah, Melissa, I know you have another sub question, but this is very random, just out of curiosity. So, as an intimacy coach and coordinator, is there like a foundational set of expectations whenever you're working on a set, or is it dependent, or is the focus kind of dependent on the individual in the situation? Like, what are there set boundaries that like everyone should follow in a certain situation, or is it very much tailored to the needs of the individual?
Both things are true. Like if I'm working on a SAG set, there are rules set by the union of what can and cannot happen, what procedures we have to follow, things like that. If I'm working in an equity show, though, which is the Actors Union for stage, they don't have quite as many rules around intimacy right now, but there are still certain things that we have to do. So there are some things that are set by like the union outside all of us, and I always recommend following those, even if I'm not on a union production, because that's just industry best practice. If we can do it, then let's do it, and we can always do it. So let's follow the practice.
Just curious, because some people like, I mean, may not have any of those boundaries, and so they're like, "Oh, well, okay, like anything goes" kind of situation. But it's nice to know that there are standards in place that protect every performer in those situations, whether they have, you know, a comfortability with it or not.
Yeah, so the union sets out some of those guidelines, and then it kind of goes to the project, like, what's the story say, and what are we really asking for? Because, like, just because you're okay with making out with a co-star doesn't mean you're gonna in this scene. The scene might say it's a peck on the cheek, and you're just gonna have to deal with that, whether you're okay or doing more. Um, and then there's like personal conversations with each performer of what usually like what's in the script or what's in the choreography already or the anticipated choreography from the choreographer around contact or around the story. Like it says they kiss. It says, you know, the choreographer anticipates this is a pas de deux with a lift. You know, and talking over those expectations and then what needs or boundaries or questions the performers have around that so that when we get in the room, we make sure we're upholding everybody's boundaries and we're still telling the story. They ultimately, I am an artist. I am there to make sure that we're making a piece of art that everyone at the end of the day who is also an artist leaves their job going, I had a really great day at work today. I know that I did my job. I know that I made something that I'm proud of. Was it weird? Yes, as artists, we do weird things. Like I told an actor this morning on a call, like this is the only job where we're like, and today you shall make out with your coworker. Like that doesn't happen at work. Every place else, they're like, please don't make out with your coworkers. But not actors. Like that's a regular expectation. Like, is it weird? Of course it's weird, but that doesn't mean we can't know that we didn't do a good job.
I love the non-violent communication idea like that. I love the way that you put that because there's an attack and then we talked about this in just a previous episode. Curiosity, leading with curiosity, questions, thoughts, those types of things. But if a performer voices their concerns respectfully, in the nonviolent communicative way, are there some red flags that they should look out for in responses from people?
Yeah, I talk about with, like, boundary crossing, like, there's some folks that, like, they're crossing your boundary because they're, like, grabbing you, right? Like, there are some that are obvious, but there are some that are a little sneakier, and one of those is, like, conditional. If they only wanna engage with you on their terms. It's like, "I know you wanna do that, but I wanna do this, so we're gonna do this." Or, "Are you sure you don't wanna do this that I'm suggesting?" Like, that their thing is the only way, and we know as collaborators, collaboration is about getting all of the possible ideas and combinations of ideas that we could have, and then figuring out which one tells the story best because it tells the story best, and then working from there. Like, how do we support those and support the boundaries? So, conditional things are always a red flag to me. Consistent bumping up against a boundary. If I was like, I really don't want this touch on my neck, and they're like, oh, I know you said that yesterday, but that was just yesterday, right? Today, can I do that today? And you're like, no, no, like I still have my needs and my boundaries. Like, it's not that it hasn't changed, and sometimes they might change. If I had a bruise there and the bruise goes away, maybe it changes. Or if I get to know this human who has then upheld my boundaries and supported me, and now I trust them, maybe I'm willing to risk things with them that I wouldn't have been a week ago or a semester ago. But until otherwise notified.
Especially, I can imagine at the beginning of a process when you don't know each other. Most of the time you're walking in and you don't have a pre-existing relationship or any idea who this person is. So there's no comfortability with them. I would imagine this comes in very, very handy. And then, as the relationship changes, and like you said, as you trust each other more, what that looks like may change as well.
Yeah, and to recognize this the context around things, like, as it changes, like, as we trust each other, or, maybe in this piece, I wasn't willing to do as many things because actually the content was really activating, or the character I had to portray was a little too much like me, and so I had to keep up my walls to keep those things separate. But now in this piece that is about flowers, like, I'm able to take more physical risks because I'm not taking the emotional risks. And people have to make those choices for themselves, and to also just allow for the different contexts of things to affect us and to affect our coworkers. Like, we never know everything about someone else's experience, even if we think we do, and just to allow that grace. So I would say the conditional things, if they're like only my way, if it's super, super consistent, and then just allowing for the context to affect people and affect people differently.
I'm just thinking about like being collaborative and saying, okay, this is the way you would like to do it, this is the way that I'm comfortable doing it, how do we join those? How do you deal with, and we have this a lot in this space, this is my artistic vision as a director or a choreographer or whoever, and if it's not done this way, you've ruined my vision, or this is not, like, it cannot move forward. How do you get past that?
When I am working as an intimacy director, like in a theater space or in a dance space, the first conversation that I have is usually with the power holder in the room, whether it's the director or the choreographer, saying like, "What is your vision?" Maybe it's the script says this. What does that mean to you? They kiss is a great one. Like, I could think of 18 different ways to kiss off the top of my head. Like, what does that mean to you? Right? So what are the things that they're really looking for in images, but also in story? Because if they say, "Oh, this is a first kiss," for example, and I just really want to feel their nerves, well, maybe then we actually don't need to have them kiss, or we definitely don't need them to like kiss with tongue, because the story is not about that. The story is about how nervous this person is, and we can show that in a bunch of different ways. So I usually ask those folks for some images of like what they see, but also what's the story that's really important that audiences understand, because we can tell a story so many different ways. And I've had this conversation with with directors and producers when and they've hired someone to for a role, and then they're like, "Oh, I have this boundary around this thing that's in your script," and then sometimes they're like, "Make them," and I was like, "Not how the job works." Definitely not it. But I always tell them like, "You've hired this person feasibly for their skills in telling the whole story. Like you see them as this character in every moment in the script, or you've seen their physical skills as a dancer and you need them in your choreography because of the things that they can do through the whole piece. You don't need them for one moment. You don't need them for this moment. You need them for the whole piece. I hope. I hope that's why you hired them. That you because you need them for the whole piece, and can you put it in that perspective of, okay, maybe I'm not getting this one thing that I imagined this one way, but I did hire this person because I saw them as this character or because I know they have these skills. I'm still getting 90% or 99% of all of these things. And I'm really not letting this go because I'm still going to tell this story. It's just not going to be in the exact way that I imagined it.
So, what actions should a performer take if they feel pressured or unsafe in a situation? And what resources are available for them? What if they don't have an intimacy coordinator on set, or what if they do? What are the steps for that?
If you are on a SAG or an equity project, both you or an AGMA, because AGMA is the dancers union. All three of those unions have resources that are union specific, and you don't have to be a union member to access those resources. You just have to be on a union project. So if there's one equity contract on that play that you're in that something weird happened, like you can use the equity lighthouse reporting and file a complaint either anonymously or confidentially. Anonymous means your name is not attached and you will get no follow-up. Confidentially means your name is attached and they will follow up with you, but they won't share your information with the complaint people. The unions have resources, and those are actually available on the Intimacy Direction in Dance resources page. We have all of those in one spot because I firmly believe the worst feeling in the world is not knowing where to go when you need help. It's hard enough for many of us who are performers to say that we need help or that we need assistance in some way. And then to finally get to that place in your life and then not know where to go, it's not okay. So I try to make it super, super available. So those resources are on the Intimacy Direction in Dance page. So, and then if you're not on a union project, recommend, no, lies. I require that any company that I work with has a chain of communication or a resolution pathway. And I recommend it for anyone listening to this. Like if you have a dance company, even if you're just doing a pickup for one performance, that you share with the people that you've hired some kind of resolution pathway of like, I hope you can come to me as your choreographer if you feel that I've been disrespectful or ignored a stated boundary because I want to work well with you. But if you feel like you can't, then this is the stage manager or the rehearsal director, or here's the board of our nonprofit. Here's the board president. Like you should have a bunch of resources that you can avail people of. And at IPIC, Intimacy Professionals Education Collective, where I work and teach, like we have an accountability process on our website that like, if somebody experiences harm from one of us as a teacher or as an intimacy professional, that they can go to those things. And we're also all share like, and I have this personal mentor or personal accountability partner, and you can talk to this person and they will call me into conversation around what has happened. So even someone like that can, just to give people an option of like, here's this other person that will call me out on my stuff if if we need to have a conversation.
So I know that one of the misconceptions is that an intimacy coordinator limits the creativity. They come in and they stifle your vision. As an aspiring artist, how can you prepare yourself to make sure that art is not lost when you establish a boundary, or that your creativity is still on display even if you do have certain boundaries?
I tell folks all the time, no is a creative gift. Because when I came in with a proposal of choreography or an idea of how the blocking was going to go, I already had that idea. If you tell me no, I have to get creative. I have to think of something else. I actually get to be more of an artist when somebody tells me no. I have to go, oh, how else can we do this then? And that to me is very exciting because that's what I like. There are some people who are very threatened by that no because they have that idea and they're holding so tightly to that idea. But I think if we can share that idea that like no actually gives us the opportunity to see what else there is. How exciting. How many ways could we tell this story? What could we do differently? As a creative person, that actually really jazzes me up.
Do you feel like, I'm so curious because I just feel like these, especially like the bigger productions, things that that a lot of budget, a lot of time, a lot of resources have gone into this process, right? Do you spend a lot of time battling through the red tape of it all, or like in battling the leadership on productions to stay true to this value system, or is it pretty well received and adopted most of the time? I would imagine there's pushback no matter where you go, but how often is that happening?
It always depends a little bit, but I have to say it's been pretty well received, and like I said, SAG has, like, rules around they don't require an intimacy director, but they say it is strongly recommended that you use a good faith effort to hire one in cases of simulated sex or nudity. So, like, that's the when you're most likely to sort of, like, have to have one, or someone's going to ask if there is one in those cases, and I've had a couple instances where folks are like, just go sit in the corner and yell if we get too close to somebody's boundary. But yeah, like there's, and I'm like, that's not the job. But there's, yeah, but then there's also a really big difference in film and in theater and dance. Like theater and dance tend to be a more collaborative space where we expect collaboration, also because there's time in the process. Film is like, we have this day to shoot this thing, the end. Whereas theater and dance, we're used to living in the process for a while, and so we're able to share that time. So it is more likely to happen in film than in theater or dance. Most of the pushback I have to say just comes because people don't understand what the job is. It doesn't come out of a desire to do harm or to be rude. It comes because they don't really understand, because there is that fear that I will limit the creativity. They'll be like, "You can't do that," and offer nothing else. It's like, "No, I'm here to be an artist. I'm actually a choreographer by training. I have many degrees and certifications in movement specifically. Like, I'm here to help add to the story, add to the artistry, and to make sure that we all feel really confident as we're doing it." Like, I don't believe that we're always going to feel safe. Like, I don't think there's such a thing as a safe space. It's just a safer space, hopefully, than it was before I was there. A space where we feel safe to take risks. Like, I think that so often art is risky. Being intimate on stage or on screen is risky. It's vulnerable. It's weird. As we said before, it's like not always part of our everyday thing. There's a risk in doing something new and unusual, but we want to feel safe to take those risks. And so a lot of the pushback is really about education.
As it usually is, right? So speaking of education, as you may remember from the last time you were here, we like to give homework to the people out there watching between now and next week's episode, something they can do or accomplish or learn about, to sort of just advance them forward in the topic that we're talking about. So for those watching at home that may be, in a movement, a production of some sort, whether it's film, theater, dance, whatever, how can they develop their own intimacy toolkit to prepare for any situation that might arise on the job?
Yeah, I really recommend having regular check-ins with yourself about your boundaries and about your boundaries around like the content. What are the stories that maybe I don't want to tell or I don't feel safe telling, or the characters that I don't want to portray because maybe there's stereotypes or tropes or Like, what are those content boundaries for me? What are my context boundaries? Like, oh, if it's with a person I trust, I could do this. But if it's with a new person, I'll do this. If I'm in a black box theater in the round, I would feel totally great doing this, but not in a 3,000 foot seat Broadway house, or vice versa. Like, some people love those intimate settings and feel like the audience is really having their back and doing risky work. Some people are like, "Oh my god, the audience is on top of me. I don't want to do anything." Like, everybody has a different feeling for that context that we're in physically, or like, maybe I could do this thing if I had knee pads. That's a real thing. Like, can you provide that as part of my work? Great. Then I'll do that. I'll do that on the cement floor as long as I have knee pads. That's part of the context that we're in. The floor's cement. I only want to do it that way. And then we have our like physical boundaries, which are the ones that people usually think about when we're talking about boundaries is like, don't touch me here, don't touch me there. But sometimes those physical boundaries are, I need a break after 90 minutes, even though this is not a union production. You're not going to get me one. Like, that I need to advocate for that. Or I need knee pads if I'm going to do this. Or we do have to have a lift call before performance because that's what I need to get my work done. Those are physical boundaries.
Are you part of the negotiating process with for the artists, or do you come in after that?
I usually that comes up like in our conversations about like what do you need to do your best work. So if I'm part of the creative process, things like that will come up. Um, like the last one of the last plays that I worked on, like knee pads was a definite request from one, and one was like, I really need my costume piece to like cover this part of my body. It's like, great, great. Those are needs that you have to do your best confident work. So I think of them as like content, context, and choreography. My three C's of boundaries. But it's so important that you spend time with those ahead of time, like we were talking about before, because in the moment you are going to feel that pressure of like, should I say something? I don't know if I should say something. What if I say it and it, but if you've practiced, right? If you've had that rehearsal, if you've had that embodied muscle memory of like, no, this is what I say, this is how I say it, this is what I need to do my job. And also just taking the time to process it that way gives you the reassurance of like, I am being professional. I'm not being reactive. I'm not just saying, oh no, not that, and being a diva. I've taken the time to consider this, to think it through, to have the words to put on it. I am actually being the deepest version of my professional self in this moment because I'm taking care of myself as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Great points and great homework. So make sure you do your homework from Nicole and do your homework from Beyond the Steps. We have the Steps Initiative, which was the impetus for this entire podcast. It is a collection of modules on a number of things, from medicine and science to racism to sex abuse prevention to nutrition and health and psychology, and it is all free. Bree is going to pop that link onto the screen for you, and you are going to be able to click that little link and access all of those resources. Make sure you share with anybody who you think it would be helpful to. Nicole, we want to talk about this book, the book that has a title that we got the inside information on. Tell us about it.
Yes, this is the culmination of several years of work. It's my MFA thesis, a class that I've been teaching for both Momentum Stage and NDEO, the National Dance Education Organization, called Teaching the Ethics of Teaching with and Without Touch. And just my own practice as a movement educator, I have taught both dance and theater in middle school, high school, and higher education. So taking the things that I have learned and kind of codified in the classrooms that I've been and just putting them into a book as some like a ready-made toolkit or kind of case studies for educators in any realm. It's geared mainly towards higher education since that's where I've been for the last 5 years, but really in any realm, and saying like these are some tangible ways to bring consent practices, trauma-informed practices, psychologically safe practices to movement pedagogy. That does include those 3C boundaries that we just talked about, but also goes beyond that and looks at like, what do you do on the first day of class? How do you create a syllabus that carries these values even in the writing? What do you do when there's finals and you have to grade people, which actually feels super judgy and not safe? Like people have a lot of trauma around grades. And how do we make that a trauma informed practice of giving grades? So the first half of the book is some theory on power dynamics and how they influence consent in the classroom. And that I think consent-based practices and trauma-informed practices are not actually separate circles, they're one circle, and like the intersections of those things. So there's about 4 chapters of theory and then about 6 chapters of practical application. And it's coming from Routledge. Thank you. Yeah, Routledge is publishing it December 2025, January 2026. Sometime it's coming. It's coming from Routledge. Yes, we have monthly Pay What Feels Fair workshops. So the prices for our monthly workshops run from $2 to $50. You choose what you select in there. And we have different workshops every second Monday of the month. Um, this is April. This month we had a grant writing workshop of like grant basics for artists, which, gosh, don't we need? Get me some money. In May, we have a trauma informed practices one. And in June, we have a playwriting workshop because it has 5 Mondays, we're doing a bonus workshop in June on artivism, which is a phrase our friend Matt Denny uses on like really tangible ways to use art to address topics. Like we all know art is powerful and causes change, but Matt is looking at specifically what are some change making things that we can do. And that's also the theme of our Creating Change conversation series that we started back in 2020, where every summer we have panels of artists and educators talking about hot topics, relevant topics. And last summer, we really looked at like intersectionality and how all of our identities that we bring into our work affect our work. But this summer, we're looking at using art to make change. So July and August, we'll have some panels of artists and educators talking about that. And that's really the heart of what Momentum does, is providing resources to artists and educators to keep their work relevant. Like it is so easy to get overwhelmed and just the grind of like, I gotta hustle, I gotta do this, and then lose some of the community aspect of being connected to other artists, or just feel overwhelmed of like, where do I even start with if I want to tackle this big topic of race or accessibility in dance? Like, where do I even go? That's what Momentum is there for, to provide resources and experts to keep our art connected and relevant.
And if you want to get in touch with Nicole, we still Momentum Stage FL on Instagram and Facebook. And that email is info@momentumstage.org, correct? All right. She's been a guest with us so many times. We have her information. We know exactly how to get in touch with Nicole. So please reach out to her. The services she offers are absolutely amazing, necessary, and much needed in this space.
Yes, give Nicole a follow. Check out everything. Make sure you put that book on your radar and get it when it's available, winter 2025. Give her a follow. And she's so accessible. We're really fortunate to have you. Thank you for the conversation. I'm Bree Zabrowski. This is Melissa McDaniel Grisham, and this is Beyond the Steps. Thank you to Nicole Perry, author and founder of Momentum Stage, for the great combo today. And thank you all for joining us for another fantastic episode of Beyond the Steps. You can find this episode and all of our episodes available on Facebook and YouTube at Apolla Performance and TP Dance Creations. So be sure to subscribe, like, follow, share, all the things. We'll be back next week, so be sure to tune in then. Until next time, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps. Everybody have a great weekend.